President Biden has to do something for the American people and send out stimulus payments before it's too late. Now, awesome news. Low-income households can expect to receive up to $300 this month. Lawmakers have approved new rebate programs, and these new stimulus programs will give checks worth billions of dollars more for families and senior citizens. Now, Delaware lawmakers approved a rebate program that will provide assistance in every state and every resident a one-time direct payment, everybody, of $300 or more to help with cover the rising cost of gas, groceries, and other essentials. The first round of stimulus checks have already gone out to those who filed income tax returns. But everybody, on this channel, I always do my very best in providing you guys with the most up-to-date and reliable stimulus check information. So I hope that President Biden can do something about this and send out stimulus payments. If you believe he will, tell me in the comments. Now, for the first $230 million rebate program funded by Delaware's nearly $1 billion revenue surplus this year, it will eventually provide checks to an estimated 175,000 to 200,000 residents who haven't recently filed taxes. And the finance secretary has said his office will begin searching for those residents in databases from agencies like the Department of Health and Social Services, the Department of Motor and Vehicle Services. He also added that eligible residents who owe money to courts and other state agencies will start to receive their full $300 rebate, and the legislation specifically exempted any debt obligation to other state agencies, so there will be no reduction in these payments. And the third phase of the rebate program will begin this month, as the Department of Finance just rolls out a website where residents who did not receive a check can apply for theirs. Now, Geisenberg added that his department hopes to identify as many residents as possible during the early phases of the program to avoid receiving a flood of fraudulent applications for checks later on. There may also be $270 checks from the New York State Department of Taxation. The agency announced on Wednesday, everybody, that it has started mailing out financial relief to half a billion dollars to more than 1 million eligible New Yorkers. And state officials have also said that we're delivering these relief checks to hardworking New Yorkers who have been feeling the pinch of inflation. The average payment is about $270 for each recipient, which will help address the rising costs associated with the crisis and inflation. And the checks are being automatically mailed to people who receive the Empire State Child Credit and/or the Earned Income Credit on their 2021 state tax return. To be eligible, you must have filed your New York State income tax return by April 18th. So, the state also expects that most people can expect to receive a stimulus payment within a couple of days, and by the end of this month. So look out for that, everybody. Now, although Americans have been paying a lot more at the pump and supermarket this year, they have largely been spared from price hikes from their job-based health insurance and doctor visits. Most workers can expect to see premiums and out-of-pocket costs, everybody, increase in 2023 at a faster rate than in recent years due to inflation. Experts say they will just learn how much of their employers are open and during the enrollment period, which typically takes place this month and next. Now, according to CNN, it's going to be harder than ever to be able to afford some of the basics of healthcare and those people who have insurance. The Kaiser Family Foundation is a source that said that about 155 million Americans have work-based health insurance, the largest source of coverage by far. Companies are trying to minimize the cost increases as they strive to hire and retain workers in the tight job market. Experts say that, and it could force some businesses to subsidize even more of the health insurance plans. Employers cover about 81% of workers' premiums on average, or find other ways to reduce their overall spending on medical care. And while the cost of everyday essentials are increasing day to day, it seems pretty outrageous that some companies would do this. Still, hospitals and doctors and providers are feeling the pricing pressure. So, hopefully our Congress and the government can do something about this and help out the American people with stimulus payments. Tell me what you guys think in the comments, because remember, everybody, President Biden can definitely do this.
Micro, every step of the way, making sure what we did and what decisions were made were consistent with the dream that she and Ed Wayburn had. You can't, what a blessing they were, and how they channeled others who were part of this as well, as was acknowledged by my colleague, Jared Hoffman from Marin County, that there were intellectual resources there who had a vision about parks. Thank you, Jared, for your leadership. Continues in that tradition, not only fits comfortably there, but takes the lead as a member of the Natural Resources Committee, in which Phil served as a subcommittee chair. So does Jared. Water, oceans, and wildlife. What more is there under the sun? Plus, he's on the Infrastructure Committee, which is very important in all this. Plus, he's on the Special Select Committee for Saving the Planet. He'll be going to Egypt to do just that the day after the election. So he is a leader in the Congress. When we want to know what to do about water or this or that or parks and the rest, we always say, what does Jared think? So again, not only fitting comfortably, but taking the lead. We're blessed by your leadership, Jared Hoffman. So let me just say a few things in history, because so much has been said already. But just to put this perspective, when President Thomas Jefferson, now I'm not going for 200 years, was president, he initiated the first infrastructure initiative for our country. It was called the Gallatin Initiative, and it was to build a Erie Canal, the Cumberland Road, all the things that leading into our country as the country expanded under his leadership. 100 years later, in honor of that, Teddy Roosevelt.
The Delaware Department of Finance has announced that residents who did not file a 2020 Delaware tax return will be given the opportunity to receive rebate from October 17, 2022. Joe Manchin has just put forward his new plan, folks, and this proposal would help Americans financially, while also addressing the rising cost of living. Democrats are pushing to use the budget reconciliation process. A spokesperson for Manchin confirmed that Manchin will vote against President Biden's proposal of a gas tax holiday. Biden has already called on Congress to suspend federal taxes on gas and diesel for 3 months. That would cut 0.18 cents per gallon on gas and 0.24% on diesel for drivers. Manchin also pointed out that if the gas tax is passed for 3 months, it would be scheduled to go back into effect in September, right before elections. Manchin was also hesitant to sign a bill that would remove a resource for improved infrastructure. Manchin told reporters, "We need a lot of adjustments made." The last point that Manchin made in his interview with ABC is that this would only be a short-term fix, and Americans are cutting back at the gas pump and not just the amount of fuel they put in their tanks. Consumers are also changing the way they fill their grocery bags with rest stop food and other essentials. The average price of gas is hovering around $5 a gallon after it recently crossed that mark for the first time on record. Here is more breaking news. Several Republicans have joined scores of Democratic lawmakers calling for the U.S. to reinstate child tax credit payments. For more than a year, Joe Biden and several senators have advocated for regular child tax credit payments to help families struggling to feed and clothe their children. Bernie Sanders spoke from the Senate floor, saying that the Senate has strange priorities for fighting against a program that helped lift 3.7 million children out of poverty during the worst of the crisis. Instead, Congress passed a $53 billion bill to help the microchip industry. Food insecurity was not addressed, though. Today, rather than support the child tax credit plan pushed for Democratic colleagues, the Republicans have staked claim to a plan of their own. The Family Security Act 2.0 is meant to help many families across the country. Under this plan, parents will receive $350 per child 5 and younger. The existing $2,000 credit was raised to $3,600 for children ages 5 and younger. And if a parent opted in, half the credit was sent in monthly payments, beginning in July and ending in December. The other half of the credit was collected when 2021 tax returns were filed. But what was exceptional about the bill is that it allowed parents who typically earn too little to file income taxes to receive the same payments. And payments helped so many that former Treasury Secretary Rubin and Jacob Lew wrote an op-ed letter in the New York Times calling to make the child tax credit permanent. Yes, everybody, lawmakers in Congress, everybody. Yes, folks, lawmakers in Congress are negotiating on a crisis relief bill that would actually establish new stimulus programs. Also, another state will begin sending out $600 stimulus payments to many low-income Americans. This can help so many people. Here's the latest news on that. More than 200,000 Oregon workers will receive $600 checks from the state as soon as this week. Oregon lawmakers in March approved a one-time stimulus payment for certain low-income workers. The payments would go to people in Oregon who claimed the Earned Income Tax Credit in 2020, a tax break for low-income working households and live within the state in the last 6 months of the year. The Oregon Department of Revenue said Wednesday that it would distribute nearly $140 million to 300,000 qualifying households. Payments are limited to one per household. About $82 million will be deposited directly into the banks. And while the remaining nearly $60 million will be sent via mail, the state said qualifying individuals will receive the money no later than July 1st. The state is paying for the crisis stimulus payments, and Rich Hoover, a spokesperson for the Oregon Department of Revenue, said the payments are not subject to state or federal income tax. The relief bill passed by wide margins in both chambers of the Oregon legislature this spring, with a handful of Republicans and Democrats supporting this bill. The payments evolved from a 2021 plan for larger stimulus payments up to $2,000. to essential workers who stayed on the job during the crisis, and those who rejoined the workforce last fall. That's awesome news, everybody.
Senator Warren and Senator Sanders' Medicare for All that's seeking to control cost